All right, everybody, just a quick video to show you how to use the white terra sigillata for burnishing. And some of you may have already seen the video that I did using the new Riverside Cito terra sigillata, but I have a new batch that my friend Mary made up for me, and it's made with Georgia kaolin, and it's going to be a beautiful white color to really set off the patterns and random cool effects that we're going to get from firings at the end of the month. I have here a nice soft bristled brush that really helps to lay on the terra sig nice and even, and I'm going to show you how this all goes in just a second. All right, so this is quite the setup I've got going here. I've got a foam bat attached to my wheel head with the bat pins, and then I've got this bat that I borrowed from the studio. I guess I better bring it back once you see how to do this. You can make your chuck fresh and it's fine. You might want to put some dry cleaning plastic over it so you don't mark the surface at all. But I'm just going to use this bisque fired chuck, get it centered up, and then I've got a microfiber cloth that I'm going to just kind of tuck down in there, and that'll accept the neck of this bottle. I always like to do the bottom part first. And I'll try to get it level, spin the wheel. And it doesn't have to be perfect, it just has to be close enough that you can lay on the terra sig nice and smoothly. So if you feel like the whole chuck has gotten off center, you can adjust that. And that's going to be plenty accurate enough. I've also got grocery bag here, polyethylene bag that I'm going to use for burnishing. So I'm all set, I'm on the wheel. Of course you can do this by hand, you don't have to put it on the wheel, but I always like the just the uniformity and the tie-in between the way my brush strokes go and the way the piece was formed on the wheel. So if there are streaks and things, they at least kind of make sense with the form. And for me, that's a worthwhile advantage. So this terra sig is really nice and thin. It's almost like milk. I'm gonna load up my brush. And I wanna make sure that I touch the brush to the side of the container so I don't have so much that as soon as I touch it to the pot, it all runs out. Kind of the same idea as when you're using wax on a pot. You don't want it to just go everywhere. And I'm gonna just lay it on. And it's going to take more than one coat. This piece is pretty much bone dry. The very bottom had a little bit of moisture in it, so it's going to take it a little bit longer to soak up the extra. And when you get on this vertical side, you really have to be careful that you don't overload it. So barely touch the tips of the bristles down. And then I move my way along. And I'm just going to try to get to the equator. I'm not going to try to go up underneath there. Because this is so thin, I'm putting on more coats than I might normally put on. That's going to give me an opportunity to have a little more leeway and time to get the burnishing done. And I don't have to worry about it getting so thick that it flakes off. It's always the worry. If you put on terra sig too heavily, it can flake. And what's amazing to me, gosh, Mary makes a mean terra sig. Just brushing it on there, it already has an incredible sheen. I'm gonna take and just lightly burnish with this bag, and that's probably all it's gonna take to just put a really nice surface on there. I'm using a really light pressure right now because there's nothing much holding it on there. I'll just pull it out of the chuck, hold it by its neck, and just give it a final little rub. And oh my goodness, that is coming up gorgeous. You'll probably see a little bit of streakiness of the clay body underneath, but I dig that. The whole point of us doing these cool firings is making added layers of interest and texture and color. And so I'm not going to consider that to be a bad thing at all. This top half should burnish up really nicely because it's completely bone dry. So I'll be able to get a few coats on there. And I'll go ahead and show you. I'm happy with this on the chuck like that. It's sitting pretty secure. You can kind of tap it till it's balanced, or just kind of act like I'm centering. And that's holding it in place well enough. And I'm gonna start all the way up on the lip and work my way down. I don't want big drips going down inside, but I want to get, well, there go the big drips inside. So whether I want it or not, I've got it. And of course my brush isn't narrow enough to get in there, so I'm just gonna live with it. It's really hard to get it to go on perfectly on these little narrow parts. You've got so much material for the number of, or the distance that it's spinning around, you can kind of overwhelm it. I feel like maybe I saw a drip fall. Of course I did. All right, so I'm gonna have to go down a little bit deeper. I'm basically not following my own advice. I'm doing a sloppy job of striking off the excess that's in the brush. It's worth taking the time to just get the loose drips off of there. I'm wanting to get it laid on there and built up quickly, and quickly isn't always the best idea. There it goes, dripping into the inside again. And honestly, who's gonna ever look on the inside? But I just thought that if the part that's really visible from the top were nicely coated and burnished, it would just look nicer. But this is a beautiful, beautiful terra sig. It's almost self-burnishing, so I'm pretty excited for how these are gonna come out. All right, I'm gonna give that just a second to soak up, and then I'm gonna use the bag again. Looks like the top's already there. I can just power burnish this lip. Remember when you're burnishing, if you've never done this before, you got to keep in mind that this is greenware. So if you put a lot of pressure on the lip of a pot, you can snap it, and that's a sad moment. Especially if you've made a thin lip on something, and that's where you can get into big trouble. Stop the wheel and just run over this. And it just has this feel like polished, super highly polished sanded wood. It's just got this lovely, lovely texture. I have a hard time describing it, but when you feel it, you'll know what I'm talking about. It's just really, really beautifully polished. And this will end up a lot whiter. Right now, the clay underneath was a fairly dark stoneware, so that helped. Once it got wet, this thin layer of terra sigillata, you're actually seeing kind of the underlying clay body coming through. But when this bisques, it's gonna lighten up a lot, and also when it dries back out, you're not gonna see the underlying clay nearly as much. There will be some influence, so if you want maximum whiteness, choose Phoenix clay, and that'll end up being really nice and white, and really highlighting the sort of atmospheric effects that we're gonna get from the saggar firing and from Obvara. For the saggar firing, I really highly recommend the white. There's a container of it in the black cupboard above the glaze area over where the wax lives. And for the Obvara technique, because it's just kind of a two-toned black and whatever color you have on your clay, any of the colors work great for Obvara. The white's nice, it's dramatic, but the New Riverside Cito or not Cito, but New Riverside Terra Sig looks great. But yeah, definitely for saggar, this is where it's at. I hope that helps. Definitely send me an email if you need further clarification. But you know, 2 or 3 coats, maybe 4 coats with this real thin Terra Sig, and then just sort of polishing with a clean grocery bag while it still has the leather hard coloration to it. And just be careful with them. It's greenware. Okay, thanks for watching.